Would you survive the multiverse? In Rick and Morty season 1 episode 6, Rick potion number 9, something horrifying happens. Rick and Morty destroy their world. They Cronenberg it. They hop to another universe, they bury their alternate selves in the backyard, and then, well, they just keep going. Morty eats breakfast 20 yards away from his own rotting corpse. It's one of the darkest, funniest, and most unsettling moments in the entire series, but it brings me to the topic for this video. One of the biggest ideas in all of science, philosophy, and speculative fiction, the multiverse.
I just wish I got to see more of you.
Rick Sanchez of Earth Dimension C-137. You are under arrest for crimes against alternate Ricks by the authority of the Trans-Dimensional Council of Ricks.
Now, in terms of science, we're not talking about a theory here. It's a hypothesis. It's simply a way to explain why our universe is the way it is by asking, what if it isn't the only one? Now, in physics, the question shows up in a few places. We've got quantum mechanics, cosmology, a bit of string theory. But different models have different ideas, but they're all orbiting around the same core uncertainty. What if our universe is just one of many? Now, some models describe universes that would be just like ours, with the same physical laws, but maybe slightly different outcomes. Other models will describe universes where everything is different. Different constants, different time, different matter. Some of the versions are elegant, some of them may be a bit chaotic, but a key point for us, we could never visit them. We probably will never know if they actually exist. The multiverse isn't something that we've established or proven. It's something we've imagined, based on what the math suggests might be possible, but the problem is that we have no way to verify it. So in this sense, we can treat Rick and Morty as a slightly chaotic case study maybe. It lets us ask, but what if we could go? But also, what would it do to us if we did? So is the multiverse real? Well, that's the question, right? It depends on who you ask. Some of the most well-known physicists in the world are fully on board with the concept, and others think it's kind of ridiculous. And there's like a whole group in the middle as well who are sure it's an interesting idea, but until we can actually test it, it just doesn't really count. And that's the thing with the multiverse. It's actually just not something that we can currently prove or disprove. Now, that doesn't mean that it's nonsense. It's not like someone just made it up out of nowhere. The idea does show up in serious physics, things like cosmology and quantum mechanics. There is actual math behind some of the ideas. But the multiverse itself, even if it is real, we can't detect it. We can't interact with it. We definitely can't falsify it. And in science, falsifiability is non-negotiable. If you can't test whether something is true or false, you're not really doing science anymore. You're actually just discussing philosophy, or you're telling a story. Or maybe you're trying to go viral on TikTok, who knows? So where does it all come from? Well, before we had equations or portal guns or Doctor Strange messing with the timelines, we had a question. What if this isn't the only world? Now, that's not new. That idea of multiple realities, multiple versions of existence, it goes back thousands of years, literally to ancient Greece.
Ancient Greece?
Hush, if you have questions, raise your hand.
As silly as that might seem in the show, he's not wrong. These questions go all the way back to the beginning. We had philosophers like Anaximander and Epicurus speculating about an infinite cosmos, one with countless worlds, all wildly different from each other. Not because they had telescopes and not because they were like running simulations, but because they were curious. They looked around and thought, if this world exists, why not more? So that's where this all starts, not with physics, but with philosophy and with imagination. And then much, much later, we get to fiction. Now, early science fiction writers were all over this. We had H.G. Wells, we had Borges, we had Michael Moorcock, Ursula Le Guin, Philip K. Dick, all writing around or about fractured timelines, mirrored worlds, split identities. Because the concept of a multiverse is the perfect tool to explore what ifs. We literally have the Marvel TV series What If? What if history happened a different way? What if you made a different choice? What if the world was just slightly off? These stories in fiction are about free will, about systems, and about identity. They tend to be a bit existential at times. A great example of this is Everything Everywhere All at Once, possibly one of my favorite multiverse stories of all time. But they're also an excellent way to explore different paths and different outcomes. Like, think about the Star Trek Mirror Universe, or Captain America as a zombie, Superman lands in Soviet Russia instead of America. It's like running a different version of the simulation and then exploring what happens. And somewhere along the way, we ended up with Rick and Morty. They basically took all of these ideas, turned the absurdity dial up to 11, gave us infinite timelines, cloned consciousness, simulation theory, interdimensional bureaucracy, literal time loops, and then they throw in, you know, fart jokes and a weird amount of existential dread. Somehow it works. What I liked about it is that it's not pretending to be original. What it's actually doing is it's pulling from everything. It's pulling from theoretical physics, from pop culture, from mid-century pulp novels, remixing it all into this like chaotic mess that manages to ask some real questions even if they don't mean to. I could be overanalyzing it and maybe thinking about it way too much, but you know, we'll still find some questions to be able to ask. At its core, to me, Rick and Morty is basically the what if version of Doctor Who, or it's, you know, like the way the Orville said, what if Star Trek wasn't a family-friendly show? Everyone should watch the Orville, by the way. But the main question I got from this entire season was, if there are infinite versions of me, what makes this version me? That's why I don't think we can talk about the multiverse without talking about stories, because before it was science, it was storytelling. And sometimes the science follows the fiction. A writer can dream something up and a physicist somewhere goes, wait, could that actually work?
Engage!
So speaking of, let's talk about what the multiverse actually is, or at least what people in science mean when they say it. Now, the multiverse isn't one idea. It's more like a category, a label that we put on a bunch of different concepts that all kind of orbit around that same question: what if this universe isn't the only one? Now, depending on who you're talking to, there might be different categories for or different ideas around the concept of the multiverse, like in terms of science. I tried to draft a flow chart and I started to feel a bit kind of, you know, like Charlie Day, like give me a tie and some red string. So the best way though that I think to make sense of it all is to talk about Max Tegmark. Now, Tegmark is a physicist at MIT and he came up with this super useful way to categorize multiverse theories into 4 different levels. Now, each level gets a little bit weirder as you go along, but it's really neat and it's easy to follow, so we're just going to use his structure. Level 1, regions beyond our cosmic horizon. This is the multiverse that pops out of cosmic inflation. So this is the idea that space expanded incredibly fast in the early universe. And if inflation keeps going on forever and the universe is infinite, then statistically, every possible arrangement of particles has to happen somewhere. That includes entire galaxies, entire Earths, entire U's. Same laws of physics, same constants, just slightly different outcomes. Somewhere out there, you had coffee at like 11:04 instead of 11:03, or you're wearing like odd socks today, or you actually got a good night's sleep for once. It's not magic, it's just statistics on an infinite scale. So if Rick and Morty exist in a level 1 multiverse, it's just far away. Like unfathomably far, but still technically in the same space. Level 2, other post-inflation bubbles. Now this one also comes from cosmic inflation, but with a little twist. What it suggests is that as space inflates, it buds off new regions, and those regions, maybe they undergo spontaneous symmetry breaking in different ways than it happened in our universe, which basically means that they would end up with different physical laws. So gravity could be a bit stronger, it could be non-existent, particles might not even form in the same way. You could have universes where matter doesn't clump together, where time flows differently. So this is also where we bring in the anthropic principle, right? So the idea that our universe has the conditions for life simply because if it didn't, we wouldn't be here to ask the question of why our universe has the conditions for life. Some people tend to think that the anthropic principle is like a bit of a cop-out because they want a nice, clean answer to the question of why things are the way they are. Personally, I think that is a clean answer to why things are the way they are, and I really like the anthropic principle. I'm a big fan. So basically in this level 2, the same space, but other bubble universes form where things can be different within that universe. Level 3 is the many worlds of quantum physics. Now this one, as we say, comes from quantum mechanics. The idea is that every time a quantum event happens, every time something could go multiple ways, all those outcomes do happen, but in separate branches of reality. So say you flip a coin, right? Heads happens in one universe, but tails happens in another, and the universe splits. The thing about this one is nobody notices that it happens because you're only ever aware of the branch that you're on. This concept, it really messes with people. It messes with my brain as well, because it sounds magical. And when you ask a physicist, you go like, wait, are these actual physical universes? The answer is tricky. Some treat it as just math, others treat it as a question in metaphysics. Some think that it's real in the same way that atoms are real. So if level 1 and level 2 are about space, level 3 is about possibility or probability. And whether or not it's physical is definitely a bit weird. But then we have level 4. Other mathematical structures. Now this is Tegmark's own proposal, his mathematical universe hypothesis, which basically says, if math can describe a universe, then that universe exists. This means that any universe describable by a consistent mathematical framework has a real physical existence. We're not just talking about physics here, we're talking everything. Every formal system, every logic, every equation, if it can be written in math, it's real.
What, do you want me to show you my math? I'm sorry, are you the scientist or are you the kid that wanted to get laid?
So where does Rick and Morty fit into this? What is Rick and Morty's multiverse? It's kind of all of it. So level 1 being same physics but different outcomes, we got that. Level 2, universes where life evolved completely differently, we get that as well. Level 3, constant shifting between different timelines, we got that too. They even do dabble in something a little bit close to level 4 when they bring in the simulation stuff or alternate rules of reality or those like weird meta episodes where the characters know that they're fictional, but I think that all comes a bit later. So Rick and Morty isn't playing with just one multiverse idea, it's using all of them at the same time. But if we just kind of zoom out and just take a look for a minute, what we've just talked about are 4 different ways physicists have tried to answer the same core questions. Why is this universe the way that it is? And could there be others? Level 1 says maybe there are other universes just like this one, but with tiny changes. Level 2 says maybe there are other universes with completely different laws. Level 3 says maybe every possible outcome already exists, just on different quantum branches. And level 4 says maybe everything that's mathematically possible is real. Some of these come from cosmology, some from quantum mechanics, some from pure math or philosophy. And depending on who you ask, they're either fascinating, elegant, or totally untestable and pointless. But the important thing here isn't just which universe is right, it's what they all have in common. See, they're not just asking what's out there, They're asking what it would mean if there were more than one you. Because the minute you introduce the idea of multiple universes, you introduce multiple versions of yourself. And that's where things get super weird. So now that we've talked about the different models, let's talk about what the multiverse does to you.
English is not Irish.
So here's the thing. Every time the multiverse comes up, whether it's in science fiction, random comment sections, there's always someone who will say, well, you don't know if it's not real. Maybe one day we'll figure out a way to travel between universes. Speculation is fun. We love speculation. But if you're going to argue for the existence of a multiverse or argue that you could actually interact with one, I'm going to need you to explain something to me. How? How would it actually work? Like, do you think there's like a hidden door in the back of your cupboard or like a little rip in space-time that Rick's portal gun accidentally forgot to seal? Because think about what you'd actually need. If multiverses existed, then we would need a way to detect them, a way to reach them, and some kind of system that lets you cross from here to there. That's not minor. That's not just tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time. It's fun to talk about shifting realities. It's fun to imagine portal tech or like alternate selves or the perfect version of your life waiting in some other timeline. But physics isn't just about imagination. It's about the actual mechanism. And the moment you ask how, most of the armchair theories will just fall apart. Now, that doesn't mean multiverses can't exist. It just means that even if they do, we would very likely never be able to touch them. But imagining it is half the fun. And if you could go to another universe and take over the life of another you, would it still be your life?
He is the one true Morty! The one true Morty!
Now, every few months you will see a headline like, "Scientists find evidence of a parallel universe." It's always the same story. There was like a weird blip in the data or a signal that we can't quite explain, or one line in the paper that says something like, "We can't fully rule out that it's a signal from a multiverse, but it's probably just an anomaly." The anomalies don't go viral though. What does go viral? A TikTok saying, "NASA just discovered parallel universes are real." Set it to like trendy song and some glitching space footage, and then poof, you are taken off. It's fun, sure. That kind of speculative fiction always finds a way to creep into pop culture, and it's been around for years and it's been happening a lot lately. But it's definitely upticked with things like quantum jumping, reality shifting, manifesting your dream timeline. You see, the quantum manifestors claim that there's another version of you out there who already has the life you want. And if you align your energy, or if you like vibrate at the right frequency, you can shift into their universe. Like, I do get the appeal though, because it feels hopeful, maybe even a little bit empowering for some people. But nobody ever asks the hard question, the obvious question. If you shift into a timeline where your dream life already exists, what happens to the version of you who was already living it? Do you body swap? Do you merge consciousnesses? Do they just like vanish in a puff of, sorry, you've been replaced? If there's a multiverse version of you living your dream life, you might want to make sure you're not the villain in their timeline.
Is it me? Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe I am. Am I the villain? I don't think I'm the villain.
You see, nobody ever talks about the ethics of hijacking your better self's life. And look, that's fine if you're making aesthetic content with mood lighting and mystical music, but if we're going to talk multiverse mechanics, we also have to talk about identity. What actually makes you, you? Is it your body, your memories, some unbroken thread of consciousness? Because if it's memories, well, alternate you probably has all of them up to a certain point. But if it's biology, then are you a clone and your clone has that too? If it's experiences, Like, how many have to change before you stop being you? Now, in Rick and Morty, this gets handled in the same way the show handles pretty much everything else, casually and horrifyingly. But in season 1, they ruin their own universe. Like I said, they Cronenberg it. They hop to a new one, find the versions of themselves that just died, bury those bodies in the backyard, literally, and then Morty just like goes to school as normal. It's a great example of something that the show does really well, which is give you like this really horrifying thought experiment, but then just kind of moves on from it as if nothing happened, and we all just go, wait, what? Do we just live here now? For Rick, like, he's fine with it. He handles it. He's done this dozens of times. That's pretty clear. But you can tell that Morty is affected by it. He carries it, and it does come up again in a later episode, which I was genuinely shocked that they actually brought it back. And I'm honestly curious as we move through the other seasons, will it come back again? There's this moment in that episode where he's talking to Summer and he looks at that grave, which is his own grave, the Morty who he replaced. And you realize, like, wait, he's still just like a 14-year-old kid living someone else's life in the multiverse. So is Morty Morty? Like, if you can swap lives with another version of you, are you still you, or are you just playing a part? Like, even then we have that episode as well with the Council of Ricks, where all the Ricks are treated as individuals. Each one has their own quirks, their own neuroses, their own existential baggage, but the Mortys are basically interchangeable. It's bleak. I mean, it's kind of funny as well, but it's bleak because that's the Rick and Morty vibe, right? Like, it's a philosophical dilemma wrapped up in butt jokes and fart jokes and burps before you get like too sentimental about the questions that are being raised.
I have a new catchphrase.
Oh, yeah? What's that, Rick?
I love my grandkids.
Aww.
Psych, just kidding. My new catchphrase is, I don't give a
So after all that, cosmic inflation, quantum decoherence, alternate timelines, philosophical dread, what have we learned? That the multiverse might be real, that you might not be unique, that somewhere out there may be a version of you burying another version of you in the garden. The multiverse is weird. Rick and Morty is weirder, that's true. It's not just dark humor, it's like a combination of philosophy, modern physics, and speculative fiction, all wrapped into a 22-minute cartoon about a depressed genius and his increasingly traumatized grandson. And a lot of dick jokes. You don't have to believe in the multiverse. But if you do, just try not to bury yourself in the backyard, you guys.
That's season 1! Boom! Season 1, I'm seeing it in your face!
And that's it. That is Rick and Morty season 1. We made it to the end of my first series on Patreon, so thank you for hanging out with me. I wasn't really sure how the Rick and Morty one was going to go, but in the end, I'm actually quite happy with this discussion or this analysis. I think it's really interesting when you actually really think about it, and love Tegmark's level structure for thinking about the different multiverse models. We're going to take a Rick and Morty break, and when we come back to it, I might do it a little bit differently as well. But for now, what we're going to do next is we are going to do the Alien franchise, because Alien Earth is coming out this year, and I thought it would be cool to just kind of go back over and look through how the concepts around the science and the exploration of, you know, what's happening with the xenomorph and everything evolves throughout the different movies in the franchise. So yeah, so you can check that out on Patreon if you are interested in the Alien franchise, and of course the whole Rick and Morty season 1 reaction episodes are all available there as well. But let me know what you think of the multiverse. Do you think the multiverse is real? If it's real, which multiverse do you think it is that is the most likely to exist? And if you believe that there are other versions of you out there, how do you think, or what do you think would happen if you were to take the place of a version of you in said multiverse? We're probably all a little bit multiversed out. There's been a lot of it in pop culture, but you know, I still think it's a fascinating topic, and I still think it's really interesting to look at what the different types could be and think about, you know, what the effect is of the you taking over alternate you and who is more you out of the two. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, engage, do those things. I would appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Bye.
Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got. Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got. Roll credits. Just shake that ass, roll the credits, go.